All right, and welcome everybody. Hello, hello. All right, so today we're going to go ahead and do our first actual live lesson. Excuse me. Today we're going to introduce how to draw the human hand using a totally different method than we did last week. And basically every single class period from here on out will be alternating between these two methods every single week, and you'll see why as we kind of keep building up our skill. That being said, as you can probably already tell, you are looking at my sketchbook here with my little pencil set and everything. Um, but that is because I am streaming from my cell phone. So because I'm streaming from my cell phone and I can't log in twice, which was my plan, I can't actually see the chat room or really anything that's happening right now on the screen. So if you want to contact me, if you want to ask me a question, you'll have to do so using your microphone because I can't actually see the chat room. So do me a favor, anybody who's in right now, I know there's a couple of you guys who are hanging out in the session here. One of you just turn on your microphone and let me know that you can see the sketch pad here, so I know that we can go ahead and jump on in, make sure I figured out all the IT problems.
We can see it.
We can
Yep.
see.
Perfect. Thank you guys. All right. Like I said, it's as a teacher, it's awkward for me because I'm just kind of hoping that my cell phone is projecting to you guys. I tried to hook up the cell phone to my actual laptop as like my camera, and that didn't work. I fiddled around a week ago trying to figure out the exact right way to do this. So I think this will work. And if we find that it doesn't work, or if it's not advantageous for us, then obviously I'll find something better. But yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and jump on in. So today we're gonna start learning the Bargue method. It's pronounced Bargue, even though it's spelled like Bargue. The Bargue method is a very, very, very old method of drawing. We're talking like what? I think it's pretty old. It's pretty old. We're talking hundreds of years old from where we are today. The Loomis method that we talked about earlier, that's a much more recent style of drawing. Now, the Loomis method and the Bargue method are pretty polar opposites, and that's why I chose them. There are other methods of drawing as well. There's the Riley method, which we'll talk about later. There's a number of methods that came out of Germany after the Renaissance. But in the world of drawing, these are kind of the two polar opposites. So if you found that you did really, really well with the Loomis method, you may not like the Bargue method. And if you find that you did horrible with the Loomis method, you may really like the Bargue method because they are so polar opposite. However, as our class goes along, we're going to slowly but surely harmonize them into one, because if you know one and you know the other, you're pretty much unstoppable when it comes to drawing. There's not a thing in the world that you can't tackle. The Loomis method is much easier for drawing out of your imagination. Okay, so if I was going to do a comic book character, I'm just going to start sketching up a character from nothing, without somebody to pose or anything. If I'm not looking off a reference, the Loomis method is where I want to go because it helps me think in three-dimensional form, kind of thinking in 3D a little bit, as opposed to this Bargue method that we're going to talk about today. The Bargue method, you're also drawing using kind of form, but you're kind of imitating form two-dimensionally. So you're going to find that as you were drawing the Loomis method, if drawing those kind of cubes for the hand and the palm, if drawing those kind of cubes for the fingers was kind of challenging, the Bargue method is much more up your alley, because the Bargue method is almost entirely dedicated to drawing from reference. You always want to have something to look off of when you're drawing with the Bargue method. The downfall is you can't really draw with the Bargue method from your imagination. The upside is you can draw from reference and almost every single time get a photorealistic drawing. It's just that easy. It really is pretty amazing. So enough talking. Today, I've got my pencil set. For the sake of today's demo, I'm just going to use two pencils. I would encourage you to use all of your pencils. I'm just going to be using I have an 8B pencil. And let's see, I'm going to go ahead and grab something else. I'm going to grab like we'll get like an H pencil. We didn't really talk about this the first time in class, but I just want to make sure it's relevant to you. When you have a pencil set, the reason I asked you guys to buy a pencil set as opposed to just using a number 2 pencil, pencil sets are really, really important because you are able to let the pencil gauge the weight or the thickness of a line, the boldness of a line. So instead of having to take an H pencil and push really hard, I can just switch to a B. B pencils, and obviously the higher number, B pencils are going to be much darker, and H pencils are going to be much lighter. HB is right in the middle. An HB or a 2H, that's about like a number 2 pencil. So give you kind of a gauge on how dark something is. HB, 2H, right around there, that's a number 2 pencil that you probably have used your entire life. In case you're wondering, that number 2, there are number 1 pencils and number 3 pencils. The number 2 has to deal with the clay content, which is where all these pencils get their name from, how much clay is mixed into the graphite. But that number 2 also deals with its size. So that's why they're called number 2 pencils. Anyway, I would highly encourage you to start, whenever you're sketching, to always start with the lightest pencil that you have. The highest letter H pencil that you have, and then slowly but surely darken down to the highest letter B pencil that you have. But again, for the sake of argument, I'm going to go for H, just so you guys can clearly see on my sketch paper what I'm drawing, and then I'll use my 8B, which is my darkest pencil, to add a little bit of shading. So we're going to go kind of extreme for today's demo. I don't expect you to do that yourself. Also, as an aside, you may have a pencil sharpener that has 2 holes, or you might just be using like a pocket knife. I'll show you later on in the semester how to whittle your pencils to get a really particular edge on them. Believe it or not, something as simple as a pencil, you can really modify if you're able to carve away more of this wood, because the wood doesn't really do anything. There's no reason it needs to be a perfect little cone. We can whittle it in certain ways to get different effects with our pencil. We'll talk about more of that later. If you do have a 2-hole pencil sharpener, a mechanical kind here, the second one is usually for a broader, thicker pencil, so you get something like this, a little bit broader, a little bit bigger, right? And the first one obviously is maybe going to be the opposite there. You're going to get much sharper, right? So again, if I'm shading, if I'm drawing with detail. So that's the idea behind that. Finally, just to make sure we're covering all bases here, I've got my kneaded eraser. I prefer kneaded eraser compared to like a normal eraser on the back end of a pencil or something. Kneaded eraser is wonderful because you can manipulate it, right? It never gets dirty. So if I'm erasing something and getting kind of gross on my eraser, I just knead the eraser and it's clean again. If I need a really tiny little area erased, I can kind of pinch off a little bit, take it off, and be on my way. So I've got my kneaded eraser. And then finally for today, for anytime you're using the Bargue method, especially when you're learning, I'd encourage you to have some kind of ruler or straight edge. You could just take a piece of paper and kind of fold it up. That would work fine. Use the edge of like your drawing tin here. What I will encourage you to do if you are going to draw with a straight edge or a ruler, don't draw with the number side. And I know that sounds really stupid because it's a ruler. It has numbers on it, right? That's its whole purpose. But I'd really encourage you to draw on the back side or use the back side, because there's a temptation when you're doing the Bargue method to literally measure, and I'm talking like precise measurements, and you don't want to do that. The whole idea of using a straight edge is to eventually not use the straight edge and just do it by eye line, to do it by sight. That's the end goal, but we're still learning. So I would encourage you to have some kind of straight edge. Again, even if you take a piece of paper and fold it up, just have something to make a straight line with. That will be helpful. Finally, I posted a thing about this in our announcements there. So I'm going to be using this hand drawing. This is a Bargue plate. That's what this is called, a Bargue plate. You can find these on our Blackboard on course content. You'll see there's a whole folder dedicated to Bargue plates. And inside that folder are hands and torsos and feet and portraits and profile. So each week we're getting into these things. You're welcome to grab one of these ahead of time. If you are drawing digitally, or if you are referencing digital, you can just pull this up on your computer screen and just reference it. There's no reason you need to print it out. I'm going to print it out because I'm drawing on paper and I want to have a paper thing to reference. But I could just as easily have this on my computer screen and draw from that. That would work just fine too. You'll notice that depending on which Bargue plate you pick up, some of them have steps built in, kind of a sketchy, more detailed, and more shaded there. But there's some pretty big jumps in these steps. I'm well aware of that. Kind of reminds me when I was a little kid and I had like a drawing book and it would be like, draw a circle, draw 2 circles. And the last step was always like a photorealistic bird every time. That style of drawing, those kids' books that you got when you were a little kid, that comes from the Bargue method. It was completely kind of wrecked and ruined in those little kid books, but the idea is still kind of the same. So what we're going to be doing is referencing this third drawing down here, the photorealistic one, but in our mind's eye, we're going to be using these top two. So we won't actually physically draw this and then this and then this. We're going to be looking at this one, but thinking about these steps along the way, okay? Also, for the sake of argument for today's class, I brought a red pen and a protractor because that's going to make a lot of sense here in a second. You don't need them at all. I'm just using them to show you how to think in 3D. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and jump on into today's demo. You are welcome to just follow along, or if you'd like, you are also welcome to draw along with me if you want. Also, like I mentioned, please turn on your microphone at any time and ask any question you want, even if it's not about this drawing. I want to be able to answer any and all questions that you have pertaining to our class. Because otherwise, I'm just hanging out alone in my kitchen table, and my dog is napping on my couch, and it's really quiet here. So until my kid wakes up from his nap, you guys have all my attention. All right, so whenever you're drawing something from reference, let's say this hand holding this like disc, whenever you're drawing something from reference using the Bargue method, the whole idea is to rough in an overall kind of blocky area, right? So you're not just jumping straight into detail. You're trying to figure out the overall parameters. The way I like to think about it, and this is silly, but it's a good way to kind of mentally think about it, I like to imagine this is a real thing, so this plaster cast of a hand, and I like to pretend that I'm going to ship it, right? So I'm literally going to mail this to somebody. So I take it over to UPS, and they put it in a box. But of course, they don't want to put it in a giant box, right? They want to make the tightest box possible to save on shipping. So I want to think about what is the absolute smallest box that I can fit this hand into, right? So to do that, I need to ignore all the detail completely, and I need to simplify this down as much as I possibly can. And if I did that, I'm going to draw with my red pen here real quick. If I simplify this down as best as I possibly can, I'm going to end up with something kind of like this. Let's see. So I see there's a point, kind of an edge kind of here, right? That edge clearly is going up. Again, filling in this little void right here, ignoring all the detail, clearly goes up to the kind of the pinnacle of the thumb, and that's really kind of the top edge right there. So we kind of got this kind of line right there, right? Finish that off like so. Hits that point, then it starts coming back down again. Now, if we can fill in some areas of detail, we can probably cut off some areas of detail as well, and that's totally fine. So let's see. Again, imagining I'm shipping this in a box. I want it to be the tightest box possible. I want to just touch the edge. So it looks like maybe there's an edge kind of there, and an edge kind of there. Even that's a little too complicated. I bet if I just kept these going, so it's two very simple lines, right? I could draw one, I could draw the other, and then I could just slice off that edge. I think that's where I'm going to start. I'm also going to do the same on the back side as well, but we'll get there in a second. When you're drawing with the Bargue method, pretend that you have a protractor, even just in your mind's eye, right? So I say, okay, if I place this at an angle, right, what angle is the other line leaving me at, right? So you can place this here, it's going up, this is coming at that angle. So you're kind of thinking about these 45-degree bends because you're going to be referencing those in your drawing. Something else about the Bargue method, try your best to keep everything to scale. You want to draw this picture almost identically, right? And I mean down to the exact measurement, which is why I said it's very tempting to literally just measure, right? Don't do that though. I know that sounds really easy. I'm telling you I want you to measure, and then I'm telling you to not use a ruler. But I want you to train your eye to accurately gauge and do a technique called comparative measurement. Comparative measurement, you've seen artists like hold up their pencil and kind of like, kind of stick their arm out like this. What they're doing is saying from this edge right here, and then they kind of slide their thumb back and say, until that thumb right there, kind of tip of the thumb right there, this measurement, that scale, I want to reference and draw. So they get the angle, they get the measurement, they take that over here to their paper, and I'm just going to use another pencil, and they make a little kind of indentation in their mind, and this is all in your mind, okay? And they say, okay, there's my line, right? Just like that. Now they're going to adjust, right? We want this straight up line right here. Here, let's actually do exactly what I said earlier. My apologies, I'm jumping ahead of myself. We're going to cut that bit off in a second. Now I want to get this angle right here. I'm putting the tip of my pencil right to where it needs to be, putting the edge of my thumb right to the base of the arm, and again, literally measuring exactly the angle of attack, right? Something, again, ballpark, still not perfect, but it's a really good angle. So look how quickly, 1, 2, 1, 2, right? You're looking at the angles and you're sliding your thumb along to get the measurement, kind of like this here, okay? Now I want to slice this little bit off right here. So again, measurement, get that angle. And it's about there. Now I'm using 2 pencils for the sake of the demo. I normally would just flip my pencil around and draw, but I really want you to see what I'm doing in my mind. Normally this measurement stuff I would just do in my brain, but I want you to see exactly what I'm doing. Let's go ahead and do the backside. Again, I'm going to simplify it down. Looks like I can stretch from this tip all the way down to like this knuckle before things start sliding back down again. So let's get that exact angle. Line it on up. And again, normally I would just pick my pencil up and draw, kind of like this, but I want you to see what I'm doing. And from that knuckle down to about the wrist, again, I'm going to cut it off right at the wrist here, and I'll slice off this back end later. Get that angle, right about there. I'll even do it here normally. Put my finger down, and I'm just going to draw something like that, cut this off. And right there, I've got an overall kind of concept, a bounding box, if you will, of my hand, right? I've simplified it down in my mind's eye to this simple bounding box. And now there it is, okay? Now let's reference this step 1 for a second. I can see that they kind of cut in here for the big knuckles. They cut in for the thumb right there. Right? And they're kind of putting a couple little lines here for where the fingers, the big forms of the fingers kind of overlap. Okay? Whenever you're using the Bargue method, you want to try your best to use what you already have, right? So for example, right now, this big trapezoidal shape, right, is actually right. I'm going to switch to a red pen. It's actually, let's see, something like this. It comes out. This comes out, and then we cut off that edge right there, right? So we've already done that right there. Look at where the thumb starts. It starts right where that cutoff is. Start seeing those comparisons, right? Right where we cut it off. Look, here it is. Right where we cut it off, that's where the thumb is, right? So make your life easier. Don't guess. Don't kind of like, oh, well, it should be here. Don't do that. It's telling you right there. And it's just like that. Little line, just right there. Then again, there's our disc. I know that the disc is rounded, but I'm just going to go ahead and make a straight line to make my life a whole lot easier. Like so, okay? So I now know where, I can even keep this coming in a little bit. So I now know where, here's the disc, here's my thumb. I'm going to go ahead and erase. You don't really need to. If you're drawing, I very often will just leave all my sketch lines on here, but I don't want things to get too messy too quickly here for you. I'm just going to darken that in. All right, so there's my thumb, and it's in the right place. Okay. As you're going along, I want you to constantly reference and measure. Reference and measure. Don't be afraid if you put a line down and you look at it again, you go, ooh, that actually should be at a different angle. So then erase it and draw it at the right angle. That's okay. I mess up all the time. All the time. So you're constantly measuring and remeasuring. The whole idea with the Bargue method, you don't jump to round 2 until you have completed round 1 exactly. You are building a foundation to detail, right? Okay, I'm going to speed up the process just a little bit now that you have an idea. So look at these knuckles. The knuckles almost intersect right there. Right? They almost intersect where the thumb is. So again, I'm going to get the angle of attack here. Doesn't quite touch the thumb, but it's almost there. So I'm going to place it, again, get that angle, place it about where I need it to be, draw my line. Okay, that's going to be my knuckle. Looks like I got another kind of V shape in here. So let's get this angle, right? There's this angle. Let's carry that over. Right about there. Now this finger comes straight up. Let's check. Look at that. Straight up. Straight up. Okay. This looks super geometric and really goofy and wonky, but I, as the artist, am well aware of what I'm attempting to do, right? I'm putting these little landmarks every step of the way, right? Now, I'm using this ruler. You don't really need to. You are welcome to just kind of eyeball it if you want, right? So if I wanted to have like a line right here for the edge, I'm just going to get that in my mind, that angle. I'm just going to place that angle. Right? Looks like the edge of this disc comes right to that knuckle, and clearly mine does not. So I need to adjust. Don't be so proud that you can't adjust your drawing. Right? So that'll be the knuckle. There's the edge of my disc. Right? Keep referencing, keep erasing, keep adjusting. Okay. Let's see. I've got this big knuckle form kind of coming over here. I want the edge of this kind of pinky finger here. So I'm going to get that edge right there. I want to gauge, looks like, right about here. Let's see if I broke this up into pieces. This is getting a little goofy, but go with me. So if this is the edge of where I sliced this piece off, right there's that point. I'm going to go ahead and cut right to about the pinky. And then I'm just going to do a little bit of math. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, almost 4. I can fit whatever that measurement is. And again, I'm not literally measuring. Whatever this measurement is, I can fit 4 of them, give or take, on that line. So I just go to about where that point is. That's about where that intersection where we cut it off at. So we know it starts there. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm just going to do some math. Divide it in half. Divide that in half. Divide that in half. There's my 4 slices. That means my pinky finger should be right about here. Again, I'm going to get the angle of attack here. Angle of attack. Right in there. Okay. And then finally, let's get this knuckle joint right here. You can see it kind of cuts inwards. Looks like it lines up almost perfectly straight with the knuckle of the first finger. So there's knuckle of the first finger, almost perfectly straight. Get that angle, carry that angle over. Okay. I think this needs to be a little straighter now that I'm looking at this knuckle. Look at this here, right? Look at that angle, look at that angle. Let's go ahead and fix that first finger, the index finger. Right, straight across, straight across. There's the knuckle. Can clean this all up. All right, so if you're following along, even though all this really is some incredibly rough measurements, right? You at this point should start to see the hand in this rough, weird looking thing, right? I know it's in there somewhere, right? I probably could slice this up. This is a pretty big chunk of negative space right here. Let's go ahead and cut that off too. Let's see, right about here, goes perfectly straight in. And right about there, let's see, we can line that up with, what do you think about halfway? We already have those measurements. Let's use what we have. And grab that angle, just like so. All right, now it's in there. Somewhere it's in there. Okay. All right. So that's pretty much round 1, right? Try to hold these side by side a little bit. Sorry. So, and don't, I mean, this is a printout, so you can make yours as messy as you want. So right there, that looks about what we want. Is it exactly the same? No. But it looks like I missed the line right here. We can go ahead and plunk that on in, right? But it's pretty much all there. Okay. Next step, we're going to shift on down here to round 2. Okay. And you can see significant detail change right? But still no shading, no any kind of value whatsoever. However, you can tell the artist is definitely outlining kind of where the shadow will go. You see that? See these areas that are going to be in shadow, right? Kind of outlining them. So again, jumping on in, I'm just going to start somewhere. It doesn't really matter where you start. I'm going to start somewhere and just start adding in some details. So the first thing that jumps out to me is this disc, this kind of knife that he's holding out, has a little bit of a rounded edge on it. Just a little bit of a rounded edge right there. And it clearly has a lip to it as well, kind of like the edge of a bottle. So I want to add that in. Just going to shift my, my weight here and come around the bend. Now, a lot more freehanding. A lot more freehanding now. And you can imagine why if I started this first stage with a really light pencil and shifted to the next one, I wouldn't have to worry about erasing at all, right? It would just be here ready to go. I could draw right over top of it without any worry. Looks like the thumb is on the side, the index finger comes on top. I'm going to draw right through because notice how there's a little edge right there. It's easier to complete that line and then erase what I don't need. Okay. Same thing, this comes all the way down here to the base of the palm, right? So just complete the disc entirely. Bring it all the way down, comes to the very edge of the palm. There it is. And there it is. We can always erase what we don't want later on. See that? Again, is it perfect? No, it's not perfect yet. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're still in the sketching phase. Okay. Index finger, I see the side of that finger and the top of that finger. Again, get those angles, right? Let's see. I think this index finger needs to be elongated even more. Let's see. Tip of the finger, straight down, comes in, clean that up. And I'm just going back and forth. Pull that down, straight, looks like it's about halfway right there. Well, I know that measurement, halfway. Looks pretty good. Again, don't be afraid to remeasure every now and again. Maybe I want more of a tip on that finger there. My eyes are constantly jumping back and forth like a machine. Okay. Middle finger just crosses over right there. Do you see that? Just crosses over. Then cut. Now look at how I'm going over top that thumb. Looks like I need to raise that thumb muscle up a little bit. Comes right down. The next finger meets right where that disc comes to. Get the angle of attack. Straight down. Okay. The side of the finger. Working on getting down to this last pinky finger here. Now notice how this kind of separates open like an eye, right? Well, the easiest way, rather than just freehanding that, and you could if you wanted to, but the easiest way to do that is draw a line straight down the middle and then just mirror it on either side. Easy. Makes your life a whole lot easier. Looks like there's another knuckle right here. down and over. Okay. Now this looks pretty complicated to me, so I'm going to try and simplify it down even more. Looks like a perfectly straight line. Cuts over. Cuts in. Just like so. If you get to something that's too complicated, break it down into its simple, absolute simplest form. All right, I'm going to go do the thumb real quick, and then we'll finish up with the wrist, and then we'll be ready for the next step. And you can see how, if you're kind of in the zone a little bit, everything, it's like putting together a puzzle, right? I'm just referencing what the cover of the puzzle is supposed to look like as I make it. So I'm not really drawing from my mind. I've become a machine. I'm just reproducing what I see. Eventually, you'll get, I could give you a photograph or give you, somebody posing in front of you, and you would go through this whole process like a machine, referencing, drawing, referencing, drawing. Okay. Tip of the thumb kind of comes up and down like a little octagon there. Up and back down. Kind of a crease in the thumb. Comes back up right to about in between the two knuckles here. Well, I have the two knuckles, right? And I can always lower this finger down if I want to. Notice how I'm not even remotely close to detail, right? That's the big takeaway with this Bargue style. Spend all day long, just getting these measurements precise. If something is off, just keep muscling down into the weeds, making this as perfect as it possibly can be. That's the idea. Now you can see how I'm kind of freehanding a whole lot here for today's class. You are welcome to do that. You are also more than welcome to use your ruler, use a straight edge, something like that is fine. Now here, so I drew this line for the back side of the thumb. It cuts straight down into that disc, cuts straight down into that disc. However, the tips of these fingers, the knuckles of these fingers are touching right there. Mine aren't. Let's fix that. There we go. Easy fix, right? Now I've got a thumb. See it? Right? There's no magical talent. There's no, oh, you're so good at drawing, it's photorealistic, you spent 14 years. I'm copying, right? That's all I'm doing. It's one step beyond tracing, really. Straight line, straight line. Comes up, comes up, comes in and connects right where that disc touches the finger. I'm just putting lines. That's all I'm doing. None of this is all that difficult. It's very mind off kind of work. Think about that angle. Think about where it starts. Right? Here's the wrist. We can kind of slice that in just a little bit because you can see it kind of overlaps a hint right there. Comes straight down. Cut that off. Cut it off. Straight down. Straight down. Over. Over. Now I've got a little lump right here for the kind of the knob on the wrist. That's kind of in there, but I kind of lost it along the process here. And you'll find as you slowly start kind of tying things together, you'll have a little bit more cleanup to do along the process as things kind of start not totally aligning, and that's okay. So let's change the angle of attack right there, I think. That is not a real term, by the way, angle of attack. That is totally me just talking to make sure that it makes sense to you. That is not an artistic term. Would not suggest going out to the museum and say, that's a mighty nice angle of attack he has there. No one will know what the hell you're talking about. That's just me. It's a little off, I think, still. Look at that. I'm gonna wrestle with this now here for a second. Let's really get into it. Angle. I think this knob needs to be smaller. I think maybe that's what's up. Let's see. So I'm going to compare everything else that I have. Here's the disc. Here's the disc. It comes straight down. That's the edge. Look at that, I'm way off. Okay. Do a little measurement from the pinky finger to the disc. 1.5. 1.5. So this needs to be extended. That's the problem. There we go. Much better. All right. So before I do the final step here, turn on your mics. Talk to me. How do you guys feel so far about this process?
I'm feeling good.
Does it seem overly complicated at all?
No, it seems pretty simple.
Good. Good. That's really what I want. This is, go for it. Go for it. This technique, the Bargue method, is much more kind of using the left side of your brain, more logically minded. So if you're more of a mathematician, if you like more kind of perfect angles, if you're an engineer, this is the style for you, right? If you're an architect, right? Perfect, nice angles. You theoretically could literally use a protractor. I wouldn't. I don't even know how to use this thing, but somebody could. Not me. Somebody. Okay. All right. Let's finish this puppy up.
Yeah. See, I'm more of a freehander when it comes to
Totally.
drawings.
So here's the thing.
Yeah.
I am too. The freehand technique is going to be much more of your Loomis method. That's a lot more kind of like feeling it out a little bit, right? However, think about how many times you've done a drawing and you're kind of feeling it out, you're sketching, and you get all, I mean, like the first 10 minutes of your drawing is just putting scribbles all over your paper, and then you spend the next 20 minutes like erasing and cleaning everything up and making it nice. What's nice about this Bargue method is this can get you a jump start, right? I can get to this stage and now start to kind of feel out all the detail. You know what I mean? And this way I know my measurements are all perfectly correct. So now I can sit here and say, okay, I've got a fingernail. All right, well, that fingernail is kind of in here, and I can kind of sort it out and kind of find it. Oh, this is all rounded. I bet I can round that out. So that the more and more you go along, the more freehand you can choose to be, but you never have to. If you're more of that logically minded kind of mathematical person, you can still, even in this stage, still use those angles and everything. Okay. All right.
Okay.
So last kind of step, or second to last step. So you'll notice that a lot of these Bargue drawings, the shadows are very heavy. The contrast is very, very high. That is 100% intentional. Charles Bargue, the guy who made this whole style, he wanted to, again, focus on precision, not on sitting, in your chair for 14 days trying to get the perfect shading, right? So they crank up the contrast in these drawings so that you can basically take your pencil here. I'm going to use a really dark pencil and literally color. And I'm talking like Crayola crayon color so that you get just these big, hard shapes, right? Look at this, just one big, hard shape. I could even bring that shadow around and kind of shade that into big, heavy, hard shapes. As I'm shading, I can just round those corners out, right? So that they're a little bit softer. As it goes underneath that disc, it's going to get really dark. Pushing a little bit harder with my pencil, right? There's a little bit of shading right here. If you bought a drawing set with a tortilla, it's the thing that it's kind of a rolled up piece of paper, kind of looks like a weird looking joint. You can use that to kind of smudge your shadow and shading. And then if you smudge too much, grab the old kneaded eraser and pull back a little bit. So this is the time where we're starting to get into kind of the basics of shading. We're still not going to spend a lot of time on it today. Today, I really want you to focus just on this Bargue method as far as adding kind of precision into your drawings. So when you're doing your drawing, I expect to see shading, right? I expect to get as close to this kind of finished image as possible. And you can pick any of the hands that I've posted online. And you can spend a lot of time with the shading, or if you just want to do what I'm doing right now, where I'm kind of just blocking in these heavy, heavy shadows, that's fine too. For right now, I do not expect you guys to have, you know, perfect shading. We're just kind of not there yet. But we will be very soon, very soon. Look at like the knuckle right there, kind of scoops in, right? Kind of scoop it in. This is where we're getting into the freehand. It's kind of a knuckle shape. Heavy shadow over here on the disc. Look at all this shadow on the side of the hand here. It's pretty ornate. What's pretty fascinating is that as you're adding this shadow in, even though it's, again, still relatively simplistic, like these are not perfect shadows, as you start darkening some of these shapes in, it's going to start to feel even more 3D. It seems like it shouldn't, because we basically have drawn in 2D the entire time, but it really works. It's a really neat technique. Like I said, it takes a lot of the guesswork out of drawing. Especially, again, the only downfall is you have to draw from reference. You have to. That's the big downfall. All right. Now I could spend some more time really working this shadow and kind of kneading it into something. Again, I'd switch my pencils and kind of do some lighter shading, some more detail here, round things out. And as you go along with yours, I would encourage you to kind of play around with the shading a little bit. But again, I want to doubly repeat. This Bargue style across the board is much more about precision, right, than it is about shading or shadow. Okay, all right, I'm going to zoom out just a hair. So at this point, that's good enough for a demo, I think. It's still not perfect. There's something about, for me, when I look, this area right here, that feels off to me. There's something about these two fingers that, like, the knuckle's not right. Something's off right there. Notice how, like, the tip of this finger, the tip of that finger probably should be coming up a little bit more, you know? And again, these are all things you want to correct before you get to the shading stage. By the time you're actually shading, or adding value, excuse me, it should be completely mind off. You're just placing value and walking away because you spent so much time over here on the foundation to build your drawing. Okay. Again, whichever hand you choose is completely up to you. I would encourage you guys, please, by all means, jump into that the hand folder in course content and pick out whichever one you want to. You can print it if you want to do it that way. You can just pull it up digitally and draw from your computer screen. That's fine too. For today or for this week, you are only doing one. You're doing one Bargue plate. That's all I want. So again, you've got a week to do a drawing, which means it should be precise, right? That's really what we're going for, as precise as possible. I rushed it, obviously, because I didn't want to bore you too much with a demo here, but precision. Yeah.
For your drawing, I would say the piece you're missing the extra bump under the There's like a yeah.
Right here, this knuckle right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
It's like a
You're
slight
totally right.
little nudge, little bump.
Look at that. Right there. That whole shape is just missing. You're right. Good eye. That's excellent. Perfect. Yep. Yep. Thank you. Yeah. So, yeah. And again, you can obviously correct. There's like a divot right here that isn't totally there. It should get cut in a little bit, you know. But precision. I would rather you, if you're going to do this, right? If you're going to do this over the course of a week, let's say, right? If you aren't just going to do it in one sitting, which you can, it's possible. I'm not saying you can't, but I would suggest spend like 2 days just here, like just in that first one. Then maybe spend a day here and a day here, you know. But this first step, I cannot emphasize enough, needs to be hyper precise, because what you're doing is you're putting all the effort here, and it makes your life easier by the time you get here. Right? Think about how much time I spent shading, like none, right? Even though this looks the most complicated, if this is correct, then everything else builds on top of it. Okay? Questions, comments, concerns, problems? What do you guys have for me? What do you feel?
For your shading, when you drew out the lines and then like smudged it with your fingers, I never really thought about doing that. I never really shaded in that format before, so that was pretty interesting to see how you did that. But
yeah.
Mostly,
thank you.
Yeah, mostly I kind of just went over. I would kind of like start off on like one shade and then go back over lighter, and then like I just keep redoing that process until like it seems the shade kind of like fades out the way I want it to look like.
Totally. And I'll be honest, that works perfectly fine too. So what you're saying, for everyone else in the room, what he's basically saying here, in essence, you're cross hatching, but you're doing it with value. So you're kind of, for example, I'll do a quick little sketch here on the corner. If I was doing like a sphere, right? Let's say there's a light coming from this direction. So there's going to be a cast shadow right here. What you can do, and this may not be exactly how you do it, but the concept, I could kind of shade, and this is right now, this is a 6H. So very, very hard pencil, right? So I can kind of shade everything, leaving a little spot for the highlight. Shift down to, okay, now here's a 3H. And again, just adding more and more layers.
Yeah.
Right? Until eventually, okay, and again, I could blend this all out. Yeah. Now I shift down and I just keep going.
But since you have like different pencils, I guess it gets the job quicker done for you. Rather, I'd use like the same pencil and I just keep going over until like I go from lighter to darker.
So what you're talking about there, if you're using the same single pencil, it's almost like you're drawing with a pen, right? Because you're just kind of adding more and more heaviness in different directions. And again, that works perfectly fine. I would encourage you to switch with the pencil set, only because this is going to make your life so much easier. Rather than like, okay, how hard do I push this time? You literally just switch to the next value, and it pushes for you, basically, right? When I have color, or whenever I've added value for everything that I need with the 5H and I need to go darker, I don't have to now guess and go, okay, I pushed this hard last time, now I have to push this hard this time. I literally just switch to the next one, grab a 4H, and it does it for me. Nope, I need it darker, grab a 3H, and it does it for me. If you ever made like a value scale when you were in like high school or something, these pencils are your value scale. You don't have to push harder or make it. It does it for you. It really makes your life so much easier. But again, different strokes for different folks. You do what works for you. For me, I did my background. I did drawing, then I kind of did cartooning for years. Then I got into painting. Now my drawings work much more like paintings. I put my deepest, darkest value first, and then I slowly lighten in from there. And that's how you do it in painting. Drawing, you can go in either direction. You do what works for you. Yeah, but that's a good point. And again, to your point, totally do what works for you. There is absolutely not a correct answer. Again, even with the Loomis and the Bargue method, I'm just teaching you different techniques so that by the time you get to the end, you're going to kind of mash all these techniques into one that is your technique. And that's the goal. I don't want you to leave this class only doing, the Bargue method. I want you to leave doing your method, and you'll have pieces of everything. So, any other questions, comments, concerns, problems, anything like that? You guys all have your drawing supplies and everything? Doing okay?
Yes. I have a question.
Yeah, please.
When we post it on our discussion board, you want the drawing like you have right now, just that one final drawing, right?
I do, correct. Yeah. So
Okay.
what I'll say is this, so this class, I'm kind of doing an experiment with our discussion board. For this class, I absolutely want your final. That will be you turning in your project. That's how I'm going to grade them. However, let's say that you're drawing and you're at this stage and you're like, God, I don't want to go further because something is wrong. Like, something's wrong, but you don't know what to do. You can either take a picture and email it to me, or take a picture and post it on the discussion board. I see the discussion board all the time. I get like little news updates about it, or email updates. So you can post on the discussion board, you can email it to me, and I will definitely get back to you and write you a response or a kind of a critique. If you email it to me, I can just pull it on my phone and say, oh, there's your angle, that's your problem. But yes, the discussion board should be your final. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
good
you.
question. Absolutely. And remember, just as a blanket statement, I made this as an announcement last time, but the way I'm treating the class is a pass retry. So if you get a 0, I want to encourage you. That 0 means to try it again until you master that technique. So if you struggle with the Loomis method, or excuse me, if you struggle with the Bargue method, before you jump into next week's project, keep retrying this, because each project builds on itself. And if you have a hard time with this, you'll have an even harder time with the next project and the next project and so on. So even though it sounds like you'll be slightly off kilter, that's okay. I want you to really finish each step of the way and get those points along the way. So that basically, if you get to the final project, there's no way you can fail, in essence, right? So anywho, that's that. That's what I got for you guys. I hope that was useful. I hope I didn't ramble too much to you. I have recorded this entire session, so if you want to access it, you can go onto the Collaborate Ultra section and hit recordings. I will also download it, post it to my YouTube, and then add it to an announcement to make sure that anyone that wasn't here is able to grab that as well. But that's what we're going to do for today. We're going to go ahead and wrap up. If you do have any questions, hang out afterwards, and otherwise have an excellent week. One Bargue hand by Friday. That's your assignment. Good deal?
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you.
Perfect, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Be well.
Thank
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Yep. Be well. Bye, guys.